Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to have this next guest on the show. Her name is Tamar Blue. She is a health tech entrepreneur who's shaking up the mental health arena or the healthcare, mental health care arena. And she's going to talk about a wide variety of things. I'm so excited to have her on, including MentalHappy. She's on a crusade to reduce therapist burnout and reach those rural areas that are too often left behind. So much to talk about. Tamar, thank you so much for being on here. Sorry I butchered your name at the beginning.
No, you're fine. You did good. Thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you so much for all the listeners and just really all the frontliners out there doing the work.
I don't know where to start. I think I'm going to start where I normally start with everybody, Tamar, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
What made you get into this business? Because you are just revolutionizing, things out there within the industry. How did you get into
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. So had a pretty thriving community on social media. It was growing, it was getting really out of hand. It was on Facebook, and it just kept on like growing, tens, thousands of people, 20 thousands of people. And I think now it's probably 90 plus people like still on that
Yeah,
page.
yeah,
And at the time, it was just a community, a movement to really destigmatize mental health so that people can find a safe space. And then people started requesting like more and more niche support groups. And that just became completely unmanageable. We were trying to run support groups on a social media platform not really built for that. It was difficult to collect payment from people. It was difficult to keep people safe. People didn't feel as if they could really share their thoughts vulnerably because back in the day, if you were in a group, everybody can kind of see what that group that you were part of,
sure.
and just maybe some of those conversations. So it was just not built for what we were trying to do. And I've always had a passion for support groups. I started my very first one in high school.
Wow.
So it's just something that I really love to do. And then, I really started tinkering around with websites and tech. And as I started to see a lot of complaints about like the group, and then mostly like requests more than complaints, like people wanted this, they wanted a group for that. I was just like, there really should be a place where people can find support groups specifically in the same way that people can there are websites out there where people can find one-to-one therapy now
Yeah, yeah,
easier than ever before.
yeah. What do you think, Tamar? I mean, you're in this business. Um, Do you think the stigma behind mental health or somebody seeking mental health is getting better, or do you think it's kind of the same, meaning in a negative way where I mean, if somebody says, "Well, I'm struggling," as myself did at one time, I'm in recovery, and
Mhm.
you know, do you think it's getting better as far as somebody coming and saying, "Look, I'm struggling mentally"?
I think it's getting better in that there are more transparent conversations about it. So people are, I mean, you see a lot more. Even when we started, there were almost like really not a lot of social sites talking about it. I mean, there were some major websites. People know of like NAMI, one of the big ones, but there just
Sure.
really wasn't a lot of these like sub organizations or nonprofits or what have you. So I think it's definitely getting better. I think it's getting worse in that sometimes people overuse the mental health terms. I mean, you work for a behavioral health hospital, right? So you understand like if someone, says, "Oh, you're psychotic." Well, there's like a lot
Absolutely.
of there's like
Well,
some real things associated with psychosis. And there's someone says, "Oh, he's schizophrenic or
borderline.
she's schizo." Yeah, you're just like, there's like real there's like real
Well,
diagnosis around these type of words. So sometimes I think the culture, our society overuses words that
yeah,
should be a lot more sensitive because there are people who really have these illnesses, right? Like they have these challenges. The availability is getting better. The cost is getting somewhat better. The main problem is that a lot of these frontliners, therapists, providers, mental health professionals at large are really experiencing burnout themselves. And some of them are even like contemplating leaving the profession, figuring out to do something else just because of that one to one is just starting to become unmanageable. So I think with the rise of people saying like, okay, yes, I'm going to go to a therapist, there's also a rise of not everyone needing a therapist and maybe needing some other form of help
Sure.
and still allowing the therapist to really do that critical, you know, primary and secondary work that people need.
Yeah. And I think it, I mean, you tell me. I mean, I think things exacerbated tremendously with COVID, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's always been mental health challenges for people out there. I mean, depression, PTSD, but I think COVID made it worse, right?
For sure. Yeah. So around the time of COVID is when we started to receive, so our site was up and we received a huge amount of inbound into MentalHappy. And it was to the point where we had more people looking for groups than we
Yeah.
had people on our platform at the time. Now the ratio is pretty balanced and good, but because of COVID, it really exploded things for us. So the more we thought about it, we were like, okay, we not only want to be this space where providers can come and create these support group spaces for people, but we really want to be easier to find. And it was in that time of COVID that we realized, like, oh, support groups are actually pretty difficult for people to find.
Hmm.
And then we just kind of really fine tune our website, fine tune our SEO to ensure that people can really look for us when they need it. And then, especially when people during COVID, a lot of people left cities, right? People left
Yeah.
New York and maybe they went closer back home, Iowa, just somewhere rural. And that's when we kind of learned like, oh, well, it's also very difficult to get treatment for people who live in like a lot of these
Yeah. Rural
middle states.
areas.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and how do we make that easier? It seems like everyone lives in like New York, California, and Florida and Texas, but there's actually hundreds of
There's
millions of people
another
who live.
country out there.
Yeah, there's another country in the middle of all those states that actually most people in the United States, probably like a third of the United States
Yeah.
lives there.
Yeah. And let's circle back around because you talked about something I really want to talk about for a couple minutes is, compassion fatigue, burnout, especially with, behavioral health professionals, therapists,
Yeah.
counselors, obviously law enforcement, other frontliners. But what are some ways, Tamara, that you can think that, well, first of all, let me back up. What are the signs of compassion fatigue and burnout for the listeners?
Yeah, so I was talking to a therapist on our platform. She runs a couple of men's groups, and she said for her it was just feeling that she was turning more people away. Sometimes kind of I wouldn't say unnecessarily, but she just felt like she personally couldn't take more than two patients a day.
Sure.
Whereas in the early times of her career, she said that she would see, maybe four or five people a day, six, squeezing in people as much as she could. And then now she's just like, I really can't do more than like three conversations in a day. And I think it initially starts with that. Like I personally don't have the mental and emotional bandwidth to go through these things. The other thing that people I think don't see sometimes with like providers is just, especially the deep clinical ones, is that the amount of notes they have to
Oh, absolutely.
record and the amount of prep work they need to do. So
Absolutely.
by the time that therapist meets you, it's not like that's the start of their day, right? It's kind of like a teacher. You have to grade papers at night and you have to do your lesson plans in the morning. So a lot of that fatigue comes from also all the administrative work around it, the mental load of clients. And then we have to remember that a lot of these providers are running a business
Yeah.
and they're oftentimes running a solo business. So they also have like the bandwidth fatigue of all of that. So when I talked to her, she was just like, not just like the the one-on-one, but it's just everything that goes into running a solo practice.
Yeah. I can definitely, I work in inpatient and we, for a company like you mentioned, FHE Health, and there are, clinical team with therapists. And it's not solo business, they're part of a business, but I can definitely attest to the documentation. I mean, so much clinical notes and there's, PCL5s and, biopsychosocials and everything that you need to put into somebody's chart. But then there's sessions and all that stuff. So yes, that is a huge part of it that people don't see. And if you
Yeah.
have 9, 10 clients or sometimes more, I can definitely, see the burnout factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we don't, with MentalHappy, it's a platform where
Hmm.
Professionals can easily start groups, people can easily find a group, but it's not replacing like one end or the other. So it's
Absolutely.
not that we want to replace one-on-one therapy. We think it's a great complement to it, a great supplement. If you are seeing someone one-on-one, it's a great place to find community, find high efficacy of information because all of the groups are led by some type of expert. And it's also a way to like stay connected to your journey, right? So
Yeah.
it's not replacing anything. It's that really sweet in between. Maybe you
Just a
need something a
tool.
little bit
Yeah.
more. Yeah, it's a tool. Maybe you need something more affordable. Maybe you need something more accessible. Maybe you are interested in the community aspect and the education aspect, but you don't necessarily need some type of like psychological ongoing support, right? If you're just maybe, I don't know, maybe you're on the other side of a divorce and you're just emotionally navigating that. And it would be helpful to navigate that with people who are also going through the same thing. Maybe you are a caregiver to a loved one who has been, maybe on disability or injured or ill, and you're just trying to feel less lonely in that process, but also learn what it means to be a new informal caregiver,
Yeah.
right? So it's just these support groups when people, because the name is like mental happy, people think it's just, oh, depression and anxiety groups. But no, it's actually everything under the sun I've seen. Like
Absolutely. I mean, I think a
I've seen
mental,
people for adults who are adopted. I've seen support groups for LGBTQ groups.
yeah.
I've seen people leaving the military and becoming civilians again. Men's groups, as I just mentioned, like just really all of the life things that could cause you emotional decline is typically what the type of support groups we see pop up on the
Yeah.
platform.
I love mental happy. I mean, I love what you're doing because, like you said, I mean, the first thing that I thought when I heard the name mental happy is the same thing you just said. There's so much falls under that umbrella, not just mental health. Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to the brain, in my opinion, but it's your health, it's your physical fitness, it's nutrition, it's
Right.
everything that, it's all encapsulating that,
Right.
makes you happy or sad. So
Exactly.
it's
And
not is oh go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, I was like you hit the nail right on the head with that. It's all of those things, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's getting back to the counselors or the professionals, like first responders. I was a cop for a long time, Tamar, and the one thing that a lot of first responders do is they fail. They're really good at helping other people. You know that they're really good
Right.
at because they're the front line,
Hmm.
military too, but they neglect their self care.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
see it every day, and I use me as an example again. I got to a point where I was just in a bad space. I was drinking all the time. But
Hmm.
the biggest problem I had was putting my ego aside,
Hmm.
number one, and my fear and making that call. Do you think,
Hmm.
I mean, you mentioned men's group. Do you think men have a harder time
So,
reaching out than their females?
I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, I think in
I
the
agree.
beginning, when we were just getting started, there was a lot of support groups for women, and
Yeah.
we had to be pretty intentional with like going out and finding like where men's support groups are, or if a therapist came and let's say they just happened to be a male therapist, they wanted to start a group, but they just because they have like a clinical background on a lot of things they just weren't really sure what group. We would always encourage male therapists to start a men's group. It's one of the things that's highly suggested. A lot of wives like will message us for their for their
Well,
husbands.
exactly.
So there's a lot of that, right? Like they mentioned it to their wives, but they don't really want to be the one to like make the call. Um, and you're right, frontliners tend to be the ones not intentionally neglecting themselves. It's a really stressful gig, and you're just kind of pouring from this empty cup, giving to everybody else, and they tend to forget about themselves. I have a firefighter in my family,
Oh, you
so
then
he,
you know. I mean,
yeah, and
you know,
fortunately, he's super big on self-care and
good.
taking time off and really doing the things and going on walks and yoga and stuff like that. But and I think the narrative is changing a lot. I mean, it's probably the reason why you don't see a lot of overweight doctors anymore, like you used to do back in the day, right? I remember when I was a kid, I always had an overweight doctor. I don't see that as much anymore
It's like
now.
going to the gym and seeing a personal trainer who's overweight, and you're like, wait,
Yeah, right. It's just like doesn't you don't really see that
yeah,
anymore. I mean, I'm sure back in the day people didn't take it as seriously. But
yeah,
yeah, we definitely I think again, it's starting to change. It's starting to shift a little. Guys definitely still have a bit more catching up to do, but I'm
absolutely.
really empowered and pleased with just the amount of men's different types of men's groups that are popping up on the platform, which means it's the stigma is starting to wear a
Yeah.
little bit.
Well, and it's getting around because I think, I'm older than you, a lot older. And, when I grew up, it was tough it out, suck it up, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Coming from a military background, a law enforcement, it was ingrained into me. But, it's weakness if you reach out. But
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not the case. It's strength, I mean, you're
For
setting the
sure.
example. You have a young child, you said.
Yes.
So if somebody's struggling in your family, that child is going to grow up thinking, well, they got help.
Yeah.
They reached
Absolutely.
out, and you're conditioning, putting the seed in that young child's brain that it's okay to reach out and
Yeah.
ask someone to help.
And I will say like one more thing about the like reaching out thing. It's just a lot of people don't, especially in like a group format, like people tend to not know what to expect with support groups. And support groups everywhere are all very different. Like maybe it's in a church and it's faith-based. Maybe it's an AA
Absolutely.
program and they have their own, 12 program and, kind of like their true north on what they believe, right? So all support groups look very different, but on our platform with Mental Happy, they're all led by an expert. We do ensure that no one's going to get hit with advertisements, bots, any type of
Good,
bullying, negativity, or
good.
anything like that. And then also there are some levels of anonymity on the platform. So maybe everyone comes in, you have to give us your real name and last name because that's how we make sure everyone's a real person. But then,
Sure.
like, once you're in the platform, you can use whatever username you want as long as it's nothing profane or hurtful to anyone. And
Yeah.
then you can have a profile also masking, what you look like. You can ask anonymous questions to the group. So maybe you're okay chatting every
I
day
love
about
it.
other things,
Yeah.
but maybe there's like one particular topic you just want to ask anonymously. You can ask it. Nobody will know it was you. And we also prevent like screenshots. So people aren't able to
I
just
love it.
like screenshot your conversation. So again, like with support groups, I think a lot of the hesitation or even like reaching out to any type of help, right? Whether it's one-to-one, whether it's support groups or what have you, it's just a lot of people aren't sure what the expectations are of them and what it's going to be like when they get there, how safe it's going to be, how private is it
Yeah.
going to be. So, definitely whatever platform you choose, whatever medium of help you choose, just look and see like how safe it is, gauge for yourself. But just know that there are really great, secure and private tools out there.
Yeah, I love it. It's what you're doing with Mental Happy and that platform. As well as I do, Tamara, is that people want a safe environment. They want a safe environment. If they're disclosing, especially if they're not masking their name, they're using their real name or real face. They want to feel safe. They don't want to.
Hmm.
That's why when I do a group, of course it's in person, but I make sure I go over rules. We respect each
Yeah,
other. We
yeah,
respect each other. Somebody might have a different view than you, but this is a safe environment. I don't want people to feel, and I imagine your platform does the same, advocates that,
absolutely. Yeah,
that we don't want people to feel like they don't have a voice, no
absolutely.
matter
Yeah,
what your background is.
no matter what you're doing, no
No
matter
matter
what your
what you're
background.
doing,
Right.
you shouldn't be judging people. People in
Yeah,
glass houses shouldn't throw stones, kind of thing.
yeah, for
Everybody
sure.
has baggage. Everybody's struggling with something. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. So I love, safe environment's critical.
Yeah, and I love what you said about like the community. You set kind of like, house rules,
Yeah,
community
expectations.
guidelines, kind of
Yeah.
yeah, expectations. We do the same every group that you're even considering joining before you even click join, which is something I didn't like about groups in the past. Oftentimes it was just like, oh, you get a Zoom link and we meet on
Yeah.
Tuesdays at 6, and it's just like, okay, well, who's gonna be there?
Yeah. Who's going
What
to
do
be?
I need to what do I need to what do I need to bring? Like, what am I walking into? Like, even
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's like a virtual setting and not in person, it's still a little off-putting. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is just full transparency before people click join that group, right? Um, what are the guidelines of the group? What are some of the boundaries of the group? What is it that I can expect to learn or experience in the group? Are there any trigger words that maybe I'm not ready to receive?
Hmm.
So this group may not be for me, right? Because those words are going to be mentioned a lot. So there's just a lot of transparency. You can see the bio of the person leading the group and their background and their expertise. And then you can also sometimes see a video of the group facilitator, maybe talking about some of the guidelines of the group and what you can expect. So there's just a lot of transparency before you click join in a group, which is how it should be, right? Like
Yeah,
with anything
absolutely.
else, even when you pick a doctor, you know that doctor's background, their expertise, and if you should go see them or not.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about another talking point, and that's post-criminal justice intervention in
Yeah,
reintegration with dignity. Meaning, for the listeners out there, that means somebody who's formerly incarcerated who has to reintegrate into society because most people are not in prison for life. Most
right.
people
Yep.
are going to get out. So, what
Hmm.
are we doing? And specifically, I want to hear because I know you're doing wonderful things with Mental
Hmm.
Happy, but this is an issue with a lot. Okay, they're going right back to the same environment, a lot of them, and they need to be equipped with the tools, mentally to deal with that because we talk about recidivism rate, uh, which is huge. You know that,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. We're doing a couple of pilots now with a couple of organizations here on the West Coast and then in Texas and then another state in the Midwest. So we've just been really working with some of these partners and the court system to, one, if people can kind of get reduced time, uh, right? Like maybe they're potentially going in for a sentencing, they can get reduced time if before that sentencing they kind of get into this type of group program.
mhm,
A lot of them have issues with like transportation, maybe childcare, or maybe oftentimes some of that probation guideline is that you have to be holding down a job. So the virtual support groups makes it really easy to really meet all of those probation
absolutely,
rules. Um, and they're oftentimes in conjunction with like behavioral health centers that work with the criminal justice system. We're just the technological mediary so that they can attend these groups
mhm,
virtually. If you, I mean, you're probably familiar with like PHP groups
yeah,
or IOP groups. So
yeah,
it's just really kind of that technology, but applied to recidivism programs so
yeah,
that they don't go back. Or
yeah,
the court will say, well, these are the behavioral health organizations offering support groups. If you don't want to go to back to jail, you
yeah.
must attend one. And then the other part of it is really a lot of these centers are really doing their best to either keep them free or just like super affordable because what people don't know about the criminal system is that you come out with a lot of debt
Oh,
oftentimes, right?
absolutely.
Because you have to pay restitution and you have to pay back for whatever the thing is that you stole or broke or whatever. So there's a financial burden on people really kind of reintegrating back into society after going through the justice system.
Yeah.
I don't like to use the word criminals, but just people like really kind of
No,
moving
no,
away towards that.
I agree. We're really good, Tamar,
Yeah,
in this country at locking people up. I'm a big
yeah,
advocate with we need to do more, and I love what Mental Happy is doing more to equip people with the best possible chance, mentally, financially, so they can go back and live a productive life and have great organizations like Mental Happy in their corner, providing some resources, so
yeah.
they can be successful. Because, like I said, I mean, I was a cop for a long time, but I thought, we have to do more for people who are incarcerated, who are coming out,
Right.
because they're
Yeah.
going right
Especially
back into those
right.
environments.
Exactly. I was just gonna say because it's the cycle that
It's the
just kind of keeps
cycle.
feeding itself, and it really doesn't help families, communities,
Absolutely not.
everybody involved. So yeah, we provide the technological part for people to have
I
access
love
to
it.
the app, be able to participate in these groups. We'd love to partner with more behavioral health organizations that are looking to do so. A lot of orgs get funding from either justice system or some type of state grant, so that sometimes they do have the funding to run these programs, but it's very difficult because a lot of the behavioral health programs that run it oftentimes just have the capacity to just do in person. So we kind of step in as the tool so that they can do a lot of these programs virtually, especially if
Yeah.
someone is on house arrest, if you can imagine. They can't leave, but they can still participate. They can't go a certain distance, but they could still participate in virtual support groups. So we'd love to work with more behavioral health programs, more reentry programs, and things of that nature.
Isn't it amazing though? Often think like with your organization, Mental Happy, and I mean, we just live in an amazing time as far as technology goes. Because who would have thought, like when I was younger, or maybe when you were younger, I can't speak for you, Tamar, but we would
I'm
be
old,
able
yeah.
to, we would be able to help people,
Yeah.
through telehealth or virtual therapy
Yeah.
or a
Through a
group
phone.
where a
Yeah.
phone, it truly
Right.
is amazing. And like we, hinted before, where especially rural areas, if you're in LA or San Fran, okay, people are still struggling. But when you're in a rural area, oh
Yeah.
man, I mean,
Yeah.
platforms like yours can really make the difference. You
Yeah.
know,
And people don't realize like how close to a city is rural.
exactly.
Sometimes 2 hours outside of a city where there's no bus line, there's no train, that's rural.
No, no
You
Tesla
could
charging stations.
no ch- right. I mean, you could live in like Lakeland, outside of Lakeland, Florida, right? Just
Yeah,
outside of Orlando. And things could be very difficult for you to get from
absolutely.
Lakeland, Florida to Orlando. And that's somewhat rural for you.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it doesn't take much in terms of radius to be considered like outside of a metropolitan. Like
yeah.
even if you're living in LA, just it may not be rural, right? Maybe in the valley or what have you, but that hour and 20-minute commute
Oh,
makes
absolutely.
it impossible, or that hour and 45-minute commute makes it impossible to get to some type of form of help, right? Or even checking in with a probation officer. So
Absolutely.
anything that we could do to really help make it just slightly easier, have less excuses for these people to like not show up, to not want to do a program, because that's often the biggest thing is that they don't want to go, right? So
You got a
anything we can do to
phone.
make it
You
easier.
got a phone.
Right. And
Everybody has a phone.
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of justice reentry programs sometimes will provide a basic cell phone now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Tamar, if people want to reach out to you and learn more about your amazing platform, how can they find it and learn more about you and your organization?
Yeah, so we're in all of the app stores, in the Apple Store and the Google Play. So if you have iOS or Android, you can download the Mental Happy app. And then we're also at mentalhappy.com. Again, if you are really passionate about doing this work, leading groups, maybe want to reduce your one-to-one burnout a little bit, you can definitely start one with Mental Happy. If you're looking for a group, if you want to encourage someone to try a group, definitely check out mentalhappy.com.
Tamar, I'd love to have you back on. We could talk all day. We're speaking the same language. So I
We
love what
really
you
are.
I love what you're doing with Mental Happy. It's going to be all over the show notes for the listeners
Thanks.
out there. Everything Tamar and I talked about is going to be linked up in the show notes. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. I'd love to have you back on tomorrow.
Yeah,
I,
for
I,
sure, for
I
sure. Thank
really
you so much,
would.
listeners.
And God bless you. Thank you for doing this amazing work. So,
You too, you too.
all righty. Thanks, Tamar. Bye bye.
Bye, you guys.